Hello, everybody. My name is William Pahamis. Today I am joined with Paul Johansson, my friend, and Bryan Mckinney. Bryan is a candidate running to represent West Virginia in the U.S. Senate, and we will be asking him a series of important questions about his campaign and his plans for addressing issues that West Virginians face. This interview is not an advertisement or an endorsement. It is simply an opportunity for voters to hear directly from the candidate. So, Paul, if you want to give a little introduction first.
Yeah, thank you and welcome, Brian. Good to have you on.
Thank you.
I look forward to just hearing who you are and have the chance to let people get to know you, why you're entering this, what matters to you, um, and what people could expect from you as a candidate. So this is a really open-ended interview.
Yeah.
No gotcha questions, but hopefully some of them will be difficult enough that you'll think about it and have
Sure.
to really express. I mean, really learn
Yeah.
from us as well as from you.
Great.
And thank you.
Well, thanks
Cool,
for
cool.
having me.
All set.
Awesome. So,
Welcome.
Brian, the first question we have for you is first, tell us a little bit about yourself
Okay.
and then share your core policies and goals, please.
Well, most people haven't heard my name unless they remember that I ran 2 years ago to try to stop Jim Justice and Alex Mooney from becoming U.S. Senate, you know, leader in D.C. And unfortunately, I failed. But I think maybe Justice was the least of the worst choices that we had, other than a couple of ordinary citizens that were running on the Republican side. And I want to kind of get out there that I'm a Republican in ideology only. I'm not a member of the Republican Party. I think the parties are part of the big problem, and are why there's so much corruption. They're supposed to kind of be a referee if you think about it. And if you look at West Virginia, there's so many politicians that have been there for just decades. And I have that on my website under Drain the Swamp, and I have each candidate
I
or
saw
each
that.
politician and how long they've been there. And I got that off of Wikipedia. And what's really funny is there's a guy named Mike Azinger, and he seems like a really nice guy. I probably agree with him on almost 100%. I called him out on his own Facebook page, and he attacked me, and he said, you get your facts straight. I have actually been there a whole more term than you think that I have on your webpage. And I was like, wow. And people are swooning over these politicians like they're heroes. And I'm like, these aren't supposed to be people that we look up to, and they haven't earned that, nationally. I'm just an ordinary guy. I'm married. I have 7 kids. I work in the private sector. I'm month to month. We're on Snap and we're on Wick because I work in robotics, and in the past I was really good with sales. And right now we're waiting for a couple of products to go from research and development phase to the sales market. So I don't make a lot of money. I'm kind of right there counting pennies with a lot of people across the state. And I have to tell my kids, no, we can't go do this. My one daughter said, can we go to Hershey Park to go to Hershey's Chocolate World, just get on the ride? About half an hour ago. And I was like, and we don't have money for that right now. And it's hard to say that to your kids because, like, when times were good, I could do that. Like, I've always envisioned the day to take my kids to Disney World, and I can't do that. I've got bills, I got a mortgage, everybody's swimming in debt. And although, maybe our gas prices are a little bit lower, the grocery prices are out the wazoo. Most of the time, because of my schedule, my wife will do that with some of my kids. But on Valentine's Day, after we watched a movie together, we were grocery shopping. I just can't believe these prices. And I'm just like, this is, small West Virginia, but it's got to be the same way around the rest of the country. So I'm running because, not because like it's some kind of great honor, or I'm like, hey, this is my civic duty. I'm running because I'm angry about what these politicians have done to our freedom and to our country. And there's nobody I can get behind right now who's running as a Republican. There's some people that I agree with on a lot of things, but I'm like, listen, I've got 6 living children. that I want them to have a future. And like daddy has other things. I have a job and I want to spend time with my kids. And I'm willing to give a lot of that up so that, my children have a future and their children. And I'm really afraid of the way things are going in this country. I mean, most of our debt's owned by China. And I mean, our freedoms are just falling apart. And I mean, there's just so much corruption and so little leadership in Washington and Charleston. And I mean, the things that people have told me as I've traveled around the state 2 years ago when I had more money to do that, it was just sickening. And somebody who was a state delegate just told me the other day that the GOP delegates had a big party after the last election and there were professional strippers and hookers there. And I was like, I'm not surprised. I mean, I don't have names of who was involved, but I mean, just the stories that people tell you. Like I was at a Christmas party about 3 years ago, give you a great story. And somebody brings up old Senator Byrd. And everybody started laughing because there's a lot of stories. And I said, you really don't get to be the Grand Kleagle or Grand Dragon of the KKK without killing somebody. And everybody stopped silent and looked at me and they said, you don't know. And I said, no, I don't know. He goes, well, he killed this guy and this other guy's in prison for it. And I was like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah. It's like, but that's just the way things are. People were telling me what lakes and bodies of water the political bodies were buried in. I was like, I don't want to touch this, but I don't, I care about my children's future. This is not for me. Like, I'm not checking off a box of, oh, I want to be a senator and I want to run for president or governor. I'm doing this because I'm angry, right? And because I know most people who feel the way that I do may not agree with me on every issue, but they're upset and they want there to be a United States in 50 years. They don't have the time because they're so taxed and they're busy with their family and work and they're worn out. And so I'm like, listen, my job allows me a little bit of flexibility, not the money. I wish I could travel around and go to every meeting that there was and meet everybody, because I think that would give me a more serious chance and get commercials out there on TV and radio the way that I'd really like to. But I can't. So I'm trying to use social media and Facebook to really get my message out that, hey, I'm just as angry as you are. And I want term limits. I'll serve one term, then I'll go away. And then maybe one of you guys can run. And I'm serious about that. Like, if people start doing that and leaving office after one term, or we get that passed as a law, there's a lot more confidence, I think, in the system. And right now there's not. I mean, people look at the Epstein thing. I mean, like I was reading, not only were these people having sex with younger children, but I don't know if you read it. Is it true that they were like eating them as well? Like
I've seen and heard that. I can't
yeah, and I was
verify
telling my
myself,
wife,
but
and she's
it's
looking at me like, "No,
crazy.
that's not real." And I was like, I was telling her, they've been doing that for years. You just don't hear about it, and because there isn't a picture of it, out there, or a live video that you can put up on social media, people are like, "Oh, that's not real." I'm like, "Sure it is. That's what the rich and the powerful do." And if I was a real threat and you were a real threat, they'd come and just take care of us in a single day, and we'd be gone. But I'm just trying to ring a bell and say, hey, here's somebody that you can hire, and I'm not going to go in there and spend your money. I'm not going to take away your freedoms. I'm going to be more like a Massey and a Rand Paul and just be like, listen, that's not the reason we're there, to spend all your money and pass all these laws. And I mean, look at West Virginia. Charleston's now becoming the morality police. They just passed this law where you can't have sex with animals. Like half the state doesn't have drinkable water, and they're
Yeah.
wasting their time. Like, oh, let's have a debate on what Bible to put in schools. I'm like, it's in the library. Like there are things that are more important, like the data centers that nobody wants, and the fact that we spend more on roads than basically anywhere that I know of, and our education is so bad that there's no way to fix it. I mean, no matter how much money or how many teachers, because it's so corrupt, like it's just a bad state to live in. But I don't want to move to Virginia. I mean, right now they're like, oh, you can't have 10 bullets in your gun because then it's too scary, and they want to redistrict it. So like, only Republicans have like farmland. And I mean, I want it to be a fair process where people on both sides of the aisle get a chance to, have to elect their representatives the way they should be. And the country's just a mess, and that's why I'm running for office, because I'm just tired and really my oldest daughter, why I'm actually running, and I ran the last time, is I was telling my oldest daughter about all these corrupt politicians, and she looked at me one day and she said, "Dad, you keep complaining. Go do something about it." And I'm talking to somebody who's 10 years old at the time, and I was like, "Wow, that's a challenge," and she doesn't even know it. Like, so I was like, "Okay, I'm late in the game. I have no money." So we went to about a dozen Christmas parades and we handed out little literature and candy, and my kids loved it. And then I went and started going to all these little events and the senior center events and talking to people across the country, or the state, excuse me. And everybody felt the same way that I was. That wasn't a part of the problem. Like the candidates and their staff, I go to these events and people come up to me and be like, "You're the only one talked about freedom and like the Constitution." And I was like, "Okay, why aren't you running?" Is what I always thought. Like, I don't, I'm just one guy. Like, you should have been running 50
Cool.
years ago. If you're 80 and you're saying you don't like the system, but that's unfortunately
Yep.
most people don't have the ability to do that. So
Just check. You're not 80.
no, I'm 45. No,
Oh,
but
I was about to say.
I talk to a lot of
All
people
right,
that, who are older and wiser, and they're just like,
got it.
"Oh, it's so bad. I have no hope for the country." And because they've lived, a lot of these people have lived to see so much taken away from them, and so much
Mm.
swift, like, where people love their country. And now it's like, now we're the boogeyman, and no matter what we do, we can't, we're trying to please too many people.
Got it.
So
Wow. No, I really appreciate that you're bringing, as a Republican, a very nonpartisan view of both the Constitution, the people in West Virginia, the problem the parties cause. And I'm raising something from before you were on because you mentioned it, and I was like, wow, that's really cool and unusual. You're talking about uh, admiring and appreciating Zach Shrewsbury as a person.
yeah.
He's a Democrat running as a Democrat, but it's unusual to hear that kind of comment because
Yeah,
you're
every
just
time we would go to
describing
an
him
event,
as a person.
yeah, 2 years ago,
Yeah,
he was always friendly to me, and then we just start talking more and
yeah,
more. And I mean, we're both big guys,
yeah.
um, and we just hit it off. And I was like, "I don't agree with you on everything, but like, here's somebody that's respectful," and I could always just, "Hey, how you doing?" And
Which
when
matters
I
a lot.
yeah, and when I found out he had cancer, we were talking on the phone for a while, and I was like, "Hey, buddy, my family and I are gonna be praying for you." And he was really psyched that I was running again, because he's like, "I can't go to these events and not have anybody to talk to," when it's like both sides, because nobody will talk to him. He's
Wow.
not
Yeah.
exactly loved by the Democrats either, because he used to be, I guess he used to be a Republican. He's pro the Second Amendment, and I think he was a Marine, so he's kind of like, you know, and the things he's doing for West Virginia. Like, I joked with him, I said, "Man, if you're the candidate, and I have the choice between Mooney and our former governor," I said, "I might come out and endorse you." But unfortunately, he wasn't. But he's done a lot to help a lot of people. But I hate to say it, I don't think West Virginia is going to elect a Democrat. I think they'll elect Baby Dog before they would a blue dog Democrat, or a moderate, somebody who's well spoken and doesn't, fit in more with like the California crowd. And Zach doesn't. He's a really smart guy, and I would really seriously think about hiring him if I were to actually get elected, because he'd be
Wow.
somebody who could tell me, like, "Okay, here's what the other side thinks for everything,"
Hmm.
you
Right.
know, and
Yeah.
you need that, because you just don't want to be like one sided, because there are people of all different beliefs. You can't please everybody, and obviously, I have a conservative leaning on a lot of issues, but like, I'm very pro environment. Like, I have been screaming about this water issue, and I think I've yelled so much that some of these other Republicans are like, "Well, we'll go visit the town and we'll talk to the people," but we won't actually do anything. And then, Like I've seen some pictures of Tom Willis that went down some of these counties where the water wasn't drinkable, and he's talking to the people that are working there. I'm like, but where's the legislation now to not give Bill Gates another 300 million and spend the 280 million to fix the water crisis? Our governor came out and he's like, well, I'm going to give 10 million. Like in the same article, it's like, yeah, you need close to 300 just to make the water drinkable in our state. And that's maybe seen as very liberal, but it's, in my opinion, it's like, hey, if the people can't drink the water, then the wildlife's going to die. And the farmers, like, how are their cows and their chickens and their sheep not going to die? And then we're going to get sick. I mean, they're finding, like, there was an article about data centers in Ohio that was saying increased incidence of cancer within a certain distance of the data center. I said, I'm not surprised,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. You're probably going to see that with all the solar farms as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if you know that, but if you have a solar farm, you can never grow anything ever again because of all the chemicals that leach off of those solar panels into the groundwater. Yeah, it's pretty scary stuff, but they don't talk about that. They're like, oh, it's going to create jobs. And last time I drove by a solar plant, farm, there was nobody out there working. So
So
I'm
Paul, if
gonna
you want
actually
to,
thank you. Always looking stuff up. Yeah. So Bryan, because sometimes when we give people a lot of freedom, they actually get ahead on the questions. You
I'm
actually
sorry about
answered
that.
the second question. No, 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 that's good. That's good. This is what the format is. So our next question was going to be what influenced you to pursue politics. I think you answered that. The
ooh, but
middle
the
one was where did you
yeah,
grow up? And if you weren't from here, how did you come to know West Virginia? It sounded like you grew up here.
No, actually, I
But if
didn't.
you want to,
I
you didn't.
grew up in
Oh, then
central
please take
Pennsylvania.
that question.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
grew up in
please.
St. Paul,
Yeah, same one.
Pennsylvania. I went to Penn State, and when I was in college, I had the opportunity to go and kind of work without being paid on George W. Bush's first presidential campaign. And like 3 or 4 days of the week when I was involved, I'd be meeting him and like the Secret Service at the airfields in New England, like at 10 o'clock at night. And so I was around all these people, and then I went to the national convention. I get to meet everybody from like Bob Dole and all these people, and it was really cool. I mean, I remember being on Elizabeth Dole's like private airplane, not in the air, but like meeting her, and just and it was cool. It wasn't like, oh, these are my heroes. It was like, oh, this is kind of like when I was in high school. I was in youth and government. I remember being in the state capitol, and they're like, "Oh, do you want to meet the governor?" And at the time, we were like, "Nah." I wish I had because he was Bob Casey Sr., and he was a pretty good Democrat, um, in my opinion. Um, but then I worked on campaigns for a couple of years, but then I started seeing more of the inside, like the way the candidates were living, and like I just got so sick of the corruption and the adultery that was going on, even in the Republican Party. It's not like, they're not, these are people that make bad choices no matter what party. The power and the money corrupts absolutely, which is why we need term limits. But I got out of that. I mean, I went from wearing suits 7 days a week. I was the personal assistant to a guy running for uh, lieutenant governor in Ohio. And so it was cool, like all these events and but then I was like, I don't want to do this. Right. And so I got out of politics for a long time. And really, it was my daughter. And before she said that, though, I'd been thinking about it because I really didn't like um, our two choices, like Justice and Mooney, because I'd gone online and I Googled Mooney thinking, oh, maybe there's a candidate. And I found all this corruption about him that never went anywhere. Like, because, Congress, they investigate themselves. But I was sickened to see like the guy had been accused of stealing $46,000 of campaign money for like personal stuff. And so I was like, hey, listen, I may not win, but I don't want like this guy to win. And the worst I could find about Justice was he wouldn't pay like his he wouldn't pay the coal miners and stuff like that. But I didn't feel like there was anything that would be like, oh, it's really criminal. I just felt like he was like a horrible guy, you know. And I was like, I don't want these guys to win. And I'm like, am I going to win? Probably not, but I want people to understand there was a alternate choice. So, um, I worked in DC and Virginia for a while with a construction equipment company after college. Then I got married, started having kids. I worked in high school um, fundraising for a while. But the more kids I had, the further I had to move away from the Beltway because it got so expensive. And then we were living down near Warrenton, and it was still expensive. So I moved to West Virginia, and we rented for a long time. And only because COVID throws so much money at you
Well, when
was I
was that?
able.
And when did you
Uh,
move to West Virginia?
I've been here about 11 years, 12 years,
Okay.
maybe 13. And because COVID
All
threw
right.
so much money at us, we were able to put a down payment on a house. I had accepted I was always going to be in that lower class and stuck renting, because it was so hard to buy a house. And so, COVID helped, unfortunately. And, when you have children, you want to do what's good for them, even though I don't want to take money from the government. Hey, I have a house that I can call mine after, their 38 years of payments, um, because of that, even though I hate what happened to our society as a whole from what the government did to us during COVID years. And so now I work for a company that um, sells athletic field paint and equipment that for like painting football fields and soccer fields. And I specialize in advanced robotics that they use to paint athletic fields. So I've been doing that for 10 years within the athletic industry. So I'm kind of like
Oh,
the godfather or grandfather of that because it's a lot of people don't stay with it because it's tough sales. And so I get to meet people. And what was funny is I look back in the last decade of doing that. I go meet people that working at school districts and just regular folks, and we'd always get to talking about how we didn't like government taxes and what was going on and locally and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, like
It'd be
I
way
really,
better. Yeah, it'd be way better if they represented us fairly,
yeah, yeah,
but they don't.
yeah.
So
they don't.
a lot of
And
people agree with that point.
Got it.
um,
Cool. All right.
but yeah, so
Let me get.
here I am.
Oh, sorry. Got it. So let me give you a more potentially more difficult question.
Sure.
Um, oh, actually, no. The next two are kind of hopefully entertaining for you.
Okay.
Who are the people that you don't want voting for you?
um, People that shouldn't be voting, whether they're criminals or people that, in my opinion, have cheated the system and come here without doing it the right way in the United States. Um, I've met a lot of people who've come here from other places. I've traveled a little bit around the world, and we have something really special here. And I understand the desire, especially if your children, to get away from like drug cartels and all this other stuff. But you got to do it the right way. And I've talked to a lot of immigrants that they're like, hey, we waited in line for like 10 years, just to come here. And they've really given me feedback like, hey, I don't like people who just cross the border illegally one day, you know. And to me, it's um the rule of law is important as long as the laws are moral and just. But other than that, hey, Democrats, Independents, Republicans, anybody who's allowed to vote, I'd love your vote. No dead people, you know. Unfortunately, I know a lot of them vote, but no, just sit this one out. It's what I'd want. So
Awesome. And the other one we had for
Will?
you, this is also a little difficult. So it's is there anything about your history which, if revealed, could harm your campaign? That's just a chance to, air out anything. If not,
oh gosh, no, I've never been arrested. I wish I had, maybe. So I had stories to tell my kids and not know what to do, on a drunken stupor on a Friday night, but never got that lucky.
Oh
So
man.
no skeletons in the closet, no children left behind from ports of call with any ladies. So I'm not a goody two shoes either. But I just I had some pretty good role models growing up. My dad's a pretty good guy, and that I think he's pretty proud that I am where I am. But if you find something, I'll tell you what happened. But I don't think there's anything out there that would tell me other than a couple speeding tickets that
Yeah. Well, that might
and
be a
maybe
little harmful there.
Got it.
The speeding ticket,
Well,
now
yeah.
maybe
no,
back in college.
that's a non-starter for me. You
Now, look,
sped in your car? Oh no, that's a closer. We got to end this interview now. No, I appreciate the.
maybe
I
some
really I
illegal
want to
music
say
downloads down in the day, but back when that was the thing to do. But
I want to reflect what I think is going on for Will and I. Uh, that's a really human answer. You just kind of like direct you yourself and like, hey, if it happens, I'll answer it. So I appreciate the humanity of your
yeah,
answer. It just
you got
yeah,
something to throw
good
at
good
me?
for you. No,
Oh
that
no,
was
we
good.
don't
We want to
actually.
Oh
give people
gosh,
the reason
That's
we ask that is because in politics, of course, that happens and you get information,
yeah,
people use it against each other. And what we mentioned about social media before we started, how news and stuff like that gets abused.
sure,
And so it's an opportunity for someone to say how kind of like how will you handle it? Is there something and how do you want to talk about it? So it's handing it
sure.
over to someone. So thank you for that. That was great. Let me see. Next question is what commitments are you willing to make regarding the sources of funding for your campaign?
well, um, I really detest the idea of dark money, and out of state campaign donations. I was thinking about that today because I added a section to my website and I started hitting it up on social media. The Republican Party in West Virginia will do whatever it takes to stop a debate happening between the people running against Shelley Moore Capito because they can't control any of the other candidates really. Maybe Tom Willis because he's a state senator, but all the other ones are wild cards, which means that they don't know what's going to happen if somebody else were to win, like myself, because I'm not a party apparatus like machine zombie that just understands I have to do what I'm told, right? And that's what a lot of people on both parties will do because that's the way that they understand that's how politics is played. Um, but sorry, I lost myself here for a second. You have to go back to the question here again.
I can repeat it. No, the question was what commitments are you willing to
Oh,
make regarding the
oh,
sources of
gotcha.
funding? And you mentioned dark money, out of state
Yeah,
money, and I think you were heading towards how this impacts other politicians, and you went
yeah.
into
Sorry
machine
about that.
politics.
Sometimes I
No, it's
get
fine.
dad brain, and I think of something like from my kids, and I have to be like, okay,
No
where were
worries
we?
at all.
um, I think there should be limited funding limits. Like, I don't think politicians should be able to take loans out for their campaign. And you see a lot of that. They take these big loans, and it doesn't smell right when they do that because then the loans can be kind of forgiven, and so I don't like the idea of taxpayer. I hate the word taxpayer. It's such a common word, but to me, it's kind of like, well, like we're slaves to the tax masters, and I'm not afraid to use that term because that's how bad it is. But I think people who are forced to pay taxes shouldn't have their money spent on political campaigns. So I think that should be in West Virginia. People in West Virginia only can donate. I don't want out of state PACs, and I don't even think like the Republican Party Senate committee should be able to give money. So it should really be limited, and every penny has to be accounted for. I think in this, so there should be a max, and I know that there's some fairness rules that are beneficial for smaller candidates. That like if a candidate gets on some kind of radio show, that the other candidates are allowed like equal time if they kind of push for it. But it's out of control when they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on these races for governor and senate. Like that's not right. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And I can tell you the $1,800 that I had to pay out of pocket to get on the ballot, I feel like that's theft too, because there's a lot of great people who don't have that kind of money who might make a much better candidate than myself, but that's like the wall they have to get past, right? Because that's a good amount of change. You should just be able to. And so, what if there's 200 candidates? Then the people have to spend more time looking at their websites and what these candidates stand for. But right now, it's pay to play, right? So, it's something that I don't have the complete answer. Like, I don't have a set dollar amount, but I don't like all the dark money that can be used by corporations. And I really get sickened when I see all these organizations that endorse these politicians, whether they're sitting or running for the first time, no matter what it is. I don't care if it's coal industry or Pepsi or whatever it is. It has a huge influence on people, unfortunately, and it doesn't belong in politics, because then you owe people things, because
So
they give you
this would
money.
just check. This would extend to lobbyists. I mean,
Oh
it's not
yeah.
just campaigns, but you've really moved it into the realm of once you're in office, the same thing applies.
And
So
if
yeah,
you
thank you.
haven't seen the story about the corruption issue with this oil and gas workers association group in Texas on my website, it's definitely something to look at. So there's this group out of Texas called the OGWA, and this guy, who's their president, his name is Matt Code, and he created this fake idea that he had like 45,000 people in this organization. And in this information I post on my website, he's been very influential, including in presidential campaigns, and he's endorsed candidates in West Virginia for office. And people think that like there's like all these people involved in this organization, and this guy is basically a thug. He's a violent felon who's been stalking people in Texas, and I have the police reports. And I interviewed all the people involved with this, and basically this guy's pretending to be a lobbyist, so he goes into states and he buddies with these politicians, and then they get an endorsement from him. And on my website, not as a campaign endorsement, but they held an event in December that was sponsored by Senator Willis, Rose, and Brian Helton, where they use taxpayer money to basically promote this organization. And it's like, thank you, elected officials, for your support. And so that's our money that we're paying in our taxes that are supporting this charade, right? And the people this guy from Texas stalked were like, it was a grandchild of a woman that the political enemies. Basically, he was following them home and sitting outside their houses. And one of the women was like a big bundler for a billionaire family in the oil industry that was giving money to Trump. And her husband was the former head of the Republican Party in Texas, and he was being stalked. And like, so this guy is like dangerous. And when I put this out on my website, I was like, man, if he knocks on my door at 3 a.m, like, I'm gonna have to get my gun. Like, when you read through this and understand this guy is very dangerous, and it's kind of fits in with what you were talking about, like that corruption and that money, because it's all about the perception of influence and money for these politicians. And it's really worth taking a good read at, because I think the IRS needs to get involved with, and it's one of those dark money things, and just absolutely crazy, with what I found out. And I posted on my webpage about it, and a lot of people have looked at it. And I think that's one of the reasons I can't support Tom Willis. I like the way he votes for the most part, but when he makes these kind of decisions, I want honest politicians that aren't selling their soul for office, right? And if I was elected to an office, I'm not going to go and run for another office until my term's over. And that's important too. Like, if you're hired to do a job, you have to keep the promise to the people. Like, look at what's her name, Green, the congresswoman who resigned that was friends with Trump.
Oh, Marjorie Taylor, yeah,
Yeah,
MTG, yeah.
she was hired by people that said, hey, I want to put you in this position. And I really feel that like politicians who resign over petty things like she did, that's a betrayal of the voters. And and we're the boss. Like, so we're hiring someone to do a job that we're trusting you to do for us, right? Which is to kind of shepherd our freedom and watch out the government doesn't get out of control, which is the opposite of what they're doing. But I really feel like if I were to run for office, and that's why I'm not running for like a 2-year term. And people asked me to run for Congress against Congressman Moore, and I was like, no, like if I'm going to do this, it needs to be a. I don't want to mess up my career and run for 2 years, and because I have commitments to my boss, like he can understand if I were to be elected to the U.S. Senate, but I'm not going to go and play in the sandbox for one term in the House of Representatives because that's all I believe people should serve. And so that I have to keep my commitments, and that 6-year commitment, I can feed my kids on that salary, and I can devote my time to that. And it would be, I'd feel bad that I had to tell my boss, look, I have to change jobs, but um,
You got to
it's
do what you got to do for
yeah,
your family.
and it's yeah. So people asked me recently, oh, you got to. Somebody came to me and asked me to run for state senate and said, and I was like, no, I'm not. I don't want to be around those Republicans in Charleston. Are you kidding me? All those guys are. I'm like the things I've heard. I was like, oh my gosh, no way, no. Like I'm not interested in making friends, but I don't want to I don't want to die of a heart attack from just the stress, you know, of
Fair,
it.
fair
And
enough.
So
and
you're
I
going. So you're so you're going to DC.
well, it's like, listen,
I'm saying it's just
if
funny.
you've got one bullet in the chamber to do the most damage,
Okay, all right,
put it where it counts. I know you've seen that that statement in
all
movies
right.
before. Like if you're gonna, I mean, think about like you may not agree with like Thomas Massey a lot, but boy, he really is, he's doing what the other ones aren't. They're like questioning, is that the role of government? And I think he just happens to be a Republican. If there was a Democrat was doing the same thing that he could get together with, that would be awesome. But I'm that kind of person. I'm like, no, I'm not going to vote for any of this. Like I'm willing to sit across the desk from a 5-star general and say,
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you another $1 trillion. Maybe we'll start with 100 billion, and you justify every penny. And if you can't, you're not getting any more. I'm sorry, but like the military has never passed an audit. You've heard that before,
Mm,
right?
Yep.
yep, yep, yep.
And I'm like, that's insane that we keep giving money people. Like, you know what? We don't really need much of a military if everybody has the gun.
On
Like
top of training them to use it
that's
properly,
right. Like,
Right.
it would
like
be
in West
incentive.
Virginia, a lot of people know how to use their guns.
I mean, how many training facilities do we have? We have classes we got to take. Um, and that's good. I think most people want that, so that they can control that tool in a safe manner and understand how it works. But yeah, we don't have to worry about foreign invasion. You know,
Yeah.
if everybody, that's what they do in Switzerland. I just read that again, that everybody gets like an AR-15 style rifle with like 2 clips that they're forced to keep locked up in their house for fear of the Russians invading. Well, they're not going there, you know.
Right.
So
Nope. All right.
no,
Wow.
and I
Thank you.
just
Yeah.
think,
Uh,
yeah, we're a nation we're a nation of war and death, and I think we need to become a nation of peace, and we need to look after ourselves. And then after we kind of fix a lot of
Yeah.
our problems, then we can look at the rest of the world and say, hey, you guys did it wrong, but where can we help out without killing people?
I like that answer.
same here.
That's,
Yeah. Same.
I will point out that is what we love about candidates is that you don't condemn just somebody because they are with a party. You condemn them because they are not good for the constituents and the people because they
Right.
fight against things and
Right.
they don't solve our
Yeah.
issues. And so we really appreciate the in-depth answers with all that. And that leads to the next question about talking about issues. Many West Virginians have faced issues for decades, like, addiction, high healthcare costs, electricity costs, et cetera, like all the other ones. What will you do differently to ensure your plans actually turn into results?
Uh, well, some of that answer is it's the responsibility of the state government to handle some of that.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, now at the federal level, we want to make sure there's competition. We have what? How many electrical companies in West Virginia? Like one. Where's the that's a monopoly that shouldn't exist. Um, some states, and it's worth debating whether or not that should be publicly owned as a utility. I know there's certain states that they do the people own the electric and the water, and I think that's something really good to look at because it's our resources. Like it's our coal. And there's a big talk now online. I don't know if you've seen it. Maybe we should get a dividend as citizens for our coal and natural gas, kind of like how Alaska gets a dividend if you
And
live there so
Dakota, right?
long.
And Dakota
Uh,
also, right? I think
Probably, I think
yeah, I think
so.
Dakota does. Yeah.
It's not just the only state, but that's a good. That's the kind of stuff we need to be debating. And instead, now we've got a government in Charleston. It's like we're going to take away for your right to have local control over the issues like data centers, and I think that's going to ruin our state. But going on healthcare, that's kind of what I studied in college, on the business side, and it was really clear that the biggest problem in healthcare was government. The only government mandates I really want to see in healthcare are like mandating that every hospital and doctor and medical facility put their prices online so there's real competition, and maybe mandating that like life-saving cancer drugs can't be super expensive. But I remember when I was younger, the idea was we want companies all across the country to be filling my mailbox with advertisements of healthcare that they could sell me, where they could negotiate it with either hospitals or groups of doctors in West Virginia at a better rate than somebody else that would drive my costs down, and I could pick what I needed for my service. I remember it was like $60 when I was out of college, when I was living in Arlington, Virginia, for my health care a month. And I was getting, I mean, it didn't cover everything, and I still had probably pay out of pocket with a lot of pharmaceutical, drugs. But now, we're on Medicaid, and I used to be on a insurance sharing called like Medishare, because regular insurance was like $2,000 a month. You can't afford that, and then a $2,000 a month mortgage, and then cars, and to feed yourself. It's out of control. And you know, the state. I've seen this. They're talking about all the jobs. A lot of jobs in West Virginia now are coming out of the medical industry, right? New hospitals and stuff. But I hate to say this, that industry doesn't want to cure you. They make money off of you being sick and then providing you never ending services. And I kind of look at those jobs kind of like I do government jobs. They're really not jobs. Like they don't produce things. They're taking care of sick people. And, in West Virginia, you can't send your kid to private school without taking 80 different vaccines. You don't have a choice. Like, so it's really messed up that that we have so few choices and that it's so expensive for healthcare. Um, and I mean, I know I can go out and I can buy car insurance from 100 or 200 different companies around the country, right? But you don't really have that same freedom with healthcare. You kind of got whatever's there, and you got to pay for whatever government kind of. They're talking about trying to ease the pricing at the federal level, and I'm like, no, stay away, please. Like, don't make it any worse, And they're all promising to make it less expensive. Only a free market can do that, where these companies are competing against each other and trying to sell you what you need rather than like, I don't need 1,000 different things covered. Like, I'm never gonna get certain diseases because I'm a man, or I'm not at and I'm not going to get malaria. So why do I need that as part of my package? Like, that's just an example. But when you kind of have the ability to buy what you need, your price is going to go down. And anything government influence is never good, because you know why? Because government was designed eons ago for control and taxation, and it does what it does best: it kills you or it steals from you. It takes away your freedom. And that's really, I mean, that's how simple I'm teaching my kids. Like, this is not a good thing. Like, they're not making it so that we're playing nice in the, the park together. I mean, that's the Second Amendment and respect and kind of like just, the golden rule. We don't need government for that. And we really need very little government. And so I think a lot of this stuff is get rid of most government, take away the purse at the federal level. I mean, look, the money we're giving is going to all this stuff, whether it's fake daycare centers or Ukraine. We've given more money to Ukraine than, and nobody knows where any of that money goes. Once in a while you'll see like some kind of little bleep in the media, like, you know, another $300 billion couldn't be accounted for in Ukraine, you know,
Or another 10
funding. So,
billion to Israel.
yeah. And listen, if you want to give money to Israel, go ahead out of your pocket, but don't come in my pocket and say, hey, you're going to have to do this. Let it be competitive. I mean, like, you know, Israel needs to come and market itself why they need the money, you know? And I think if everybody had less taxes to pay, they would be able to give to what they feel, whether it's local or international causes, much more than they can now, you know. Instead, we don't have anything left over, and we're like, okay, I don't carry much cash because it's too expensive to do. I got to drive to the bank, and you know, it's kind of like by using a little piece of plastic, it's being tortured a little less when I can just, beep a little chip, then I have to go in and the wallet gets a little bit more empty every time, and it's sad, but like
Yep.
I feel like I'm working now in light of all that's going on with Epstein and all this other corruption, just to pay for these politicians their game, their pet projects. And um at least social media exists so that we're aware of it, but nothing's happening. You think any of those pedophiles are ever gonna see justice? No. And that's really sad, but I'm not surprised.
We can
I
really
actually
hope.
think it's unusual in that the way information is coming out, it may happen. I mean, I don't think this
So,
much has ever been exposed at the and now it's an international level. I mean, there are
oh
other
yeah.
countries that are starting to research and bring charges. It's kind of crazy
Well, yes, I
how
see
much
that
has been
some other
exposed.
countries, but
Yeah,
in the United States,
not
Pat
yet, not
Bondi,
yet.
she's sitting
Oh,
there and like, well, the system's gonna crash if we go after all these people. So let it crash. I don't want a
Yes.
system built on that.
A
Are
lot
you
of people
kidding
have
me?
said that. That's I've been seeing a lot of candidates saying that, which
Yeah.
is
If you get Prime Video, I highly recommend watching the first episode of season 2 of what's it's not Luther, it's the Black Detective. You'd have to, what the heck is his name? I just watched it yesterday. But they have the beginning of the show. Um they do kind of like an Epstein homage to like this guy and girl, and they're apparently the bad guys in the show, rescue all these women and kill all these predators on some island. And I'm like, I'm loving it because that's like, I feel like I had a little personal justice there. Like watching that show, like that some of these people might know. I just want there to be some rich people that like go around and just take out the bad guys. But but it's not gonna happen. We know that. That's been going on for so long, and all the way back to Roman times. I was just reading something online that one of the emperors uh built a whole city to the underage child he was in a sexual relationship with. There was a boy, and I was like, this is horrible. But this is going on today. Just different details, you know? And so
got it. Caligula
uh
and Nero.
oh yeah. Yeah, it's just same shit stuff, different day, but
I'm I'm I hope someday we get to meet and have a long discussion. This is going to be a lot of fun.
oh, I love it
Let me
because
see.
there's a lot of passion that I have, as you can see. Like I'm
Yeah.
Of
just fed
course.
up,
Yep.
and I've
And
always
so
kind
are
of been
we.
this way. But when you have children, it's different because you're like, man, when I'm gone someday, I don't want them, that statement, like, let it, if there's going to be a battle, let it be in my day so my children live free. Like, but I've also realized that I need to make them tough to understand that every day they got to fight. I got to teach my daughters how to like kickbox, use a gun, protect themselves, how to make sure you're not being followed by like, what to do if you're on a date and it goes bad. Like, how to save yourself in a bathroom when a guy walks in there and he's intent one thing. Because you don't know if he wants rape or death, You have to assume if you're just like, well, he's just gonna rape me, and like, no, the guy's gonna kill you and it's gonna be torture and fight, like, but I'd rather them. I have a couple young daughters that they just want to put on dresses and act like Disney princesses and hear that daddy thinks they look pretty. And I love that. But then I look at my 13-year-old and I'm like, you're at the age, you're doing air rifle and archery.
Yeah.
I'm teaching you to be a badass warrior princess because that's what you need to be,
Yep.
you know?
It's better to teach them in case,
Yep.
like,
Not
how does
needed.
it? Yes. Unfortunately, in a
Yep.
perfect world, we shouldn't have to teach people that, but that's the world we live
No,
Because
in.
we don't have enough good
that and that,
men standing up
Yeah.
protecting women. A lot of them are confused what it is to be a man nowadays. Well, I
no,
don't want to get involved, you know.
Yeah. So, Paul,
we're
if
gonna
you
have
want
so
to,
much fun. Yeah, no, this is gonna be great. So here's a question. Hopefully, this is fun for you. When experts present different recommendations, what process do you use to reach a well-reasoned conclusion?
Oh, that's a good one. Now, we may not agree on this one, but let's go like climate change. I remember when I was in junior high, I had a pretty liberal uh, teacher for a year, and I really liked him. But we learned like, hey, um, you know, we just got out of the big charade about from the 70s and 80s that the world was going to freeze, right? We were,
oh,
and then, if you talk to my parents and my siblings and a lot of people, now that there's this climate change. Well, it was global warming, and then it was like, oh, now it's climate change. And here I am, always been a science background kind of guy in astronomy and meteorology and stuff like that. I'm learning about the sun and ocean currents, and I'm like, just more and more coming out. And I'm like, and I saw something recently. As soon as scientists got the idea that they could get funding by going along with the idea of climate change in any capacity, they did so. And it unfortunately has damaged science in a way that may never come back from because I think authentic, creative research has really hurt. So we don't, in my opinion, we don't know if all the coal that we burn and the combustible fuels. I don't want to say fossil fuels because everybody thinks that means dead dinosaurs and dead plants, and that the idea, our understanding of petroleum has recently changed. I don't know if you see that now. They're like, oh, it's made inside of the earth, between the certain layers, and it kind of bubbles up. Yeah, and so it's not dead stuff. The coal definitely is, but petroleum, it keeps being recycled because it's part of the breakdown of the earth, and it's hard to explain because I don't have that article in front of me, but I'm like, hey, it shows that our understanding of science is never ceasing to evolve and change, and that's good. We always want to be like an engineer. We always want to have never ending improvement. We always want to learn more and more and more because that's what the human like mind is always after is more knowledge. But in my opinion, to respect that knowledge in a way that we do good with it. Right. And right now I'm like, okay, there's so much corruption out there. Like all I know is that I have a hybrid and it did a whole heck of a lot more damage getting those minerals out of the earth than drilling a hole to suck out gasoline or petroleum that turned into gas because of the rare earth minerals. And you ever seen a picture of of the landscapes where they're digging those mines in like China and overseas to get this. It's horrific.
Yeah, and
The
not to
damage
mention the
they do.
child labor too that they
Oh yeah.
continually
Yeah,
use.
absolutely. And then you see the pictures of all across Europe of the graveyards of electric vehicles because the batteries suck and they can't recycle them. And I'm just like, I remember hearing years ago if you buried a, a, a Tesla next to a Humvee, then in 20 years the Humvee would have rusted away almost entirely, but it would take hundreds, if not thousands of years for that Tesla to break down because of the mineral, the battery and all this stuff. And so we need to get politics out of science and really get people to like think again. Make knowledge non-political. I know that I've been following a little bit, I follow a little bit of the news as much as I can. Now they're talking about another serious change in the troposphere that might be showing a significant temperature change towards an ice age. I'm like, yeah, because these are cycles, like, and sunspots and all this kind of stuff. So I feel like it's been so politicized. And if you don't agree with somebody, you're just ostracized and attacked. And it's like you can't have a good discussion anymore because it has been
Which
such
sucks.
weaponized um, by both sides. And
Yeah.
it's it's just sad. And because there's money to be had, the government gets involved. And you can't write a grant proposal without it still being, how does it affect climate change? you know and I'm like, that's not good, for anybody, you know um so I don't have all the answers, guys. I know that
No,
that
that was
a lot of people have screwed things up so much that it's like, where do we begin?
Yeah.
Where can we have a
But
good
all.
that's
conversation?
what we should ask first. And that's a
Yeah.
lot where our organization is based off of is, giving people the or helping people gain the ability to think for themselves and make informed decisions rather
Yeah.
than just looking on the news and being like, "Oh, that's right." Like, because we all know that's not true no matter what you watch. And
When I was in high school and
and
college, we
and
went to libraries and we had to go into the indexes and the little
yeah.
file cards we were taught how to research and how to
Yep.
look at sources in a way that was like, okay, is this polarized, or is this kind of like an independent, valid research grade reference? And kids aren't taught that. Now it's like, Google, tell me this. Well, somebody sat around and gave Google that answer, you know and you're seeing that
I've actually had a chance because of some of the things that you raised. I've actually done quick searches while we're on here. It's like, okay, so definitely learned. It's like, all right, that one's a new one. Some of them is different, and it's like, okay, so I appreciate that. Yeah.
So,
now.
Um.
I want to point this out, though. You and I
Yeah.
are not going to agree on all this stuff, but I
oh
think
yeah.
what really, why I could be a good candidate for you guys if you were going to vote on the Republican ticket is because I'm just as angry as you are. I'm
Yeah.
not going to go out. I'm not a rubber stamp for anybody, and most of the time I'm going to vote no on spending because I don't feel like my job to go to DC is to spend money and to pass a whole bunch of laws. Like, I'm not going to tell you how you live your life unless it's hurting somebody else, you know. Um, and again, I want to look to the states, say that's your kind of your responsibility to do a lot of this. And the federal government's supposed to be like a place where people come together and talk about what's going on in their state. And then once in a while, maybe when there's a serious threat to the nation, like, should we go to war or should we not? You know? But right now it's like, how can we spend another $1 trillion today? That's what they think of when they go there. Like, what are we going to do today to screw up freedom in the United States? And the fact that we even have a country still shows you the resiliency of the concept of what the founders gave us. And they were definitely imperfect people. But if liberty and freedom was a person, imagine how badly beaten and broken our government has done to Lady Liberty since the founding of our country. And she's still standing. You and I still have the ability to have this conversation without fear of our government knocking on our door, pounding their way in, and taking us away to a government black site, and we never heard from again. I mean, that could happen right now
Let's
legally,
hope not. Let's hope not.
but I know,
But
but like we were not really in fear of that. But I grew up watching movies and reading textbooks about how that was happening in Russia
different
and
places.
China
Yep.
and even in like the British colonies and stuff like that with the Irish and all that kind of stuff. So
Yep. All right. Let me see. We've got. I think you covered the longstanding issues, right? Policy address or will?
Yeah, well, so this question was like, what's one necessary policy to address West Virginia's longstanding issue that might be unpopular, but you believe is essential? But if you want to expand on that a little more, you can.
um I think you would energy is the biggest thing, the coal and the natural gas.
Because I know a lot of people in West Virginia like coal. You
Yeah.
know, it's
And
very
I
coal.
like the idea of coal. I mean, I'm a deep religious person, and my belief is if God didn't want us to use it in a wise way, he wouldn't have given it to us, right? So if there is a creator out there, he's not going to give us all these tools just to destroy ourselves. But we've done a pretty poor job, I think, in West Virginia. Look at the water crisis. I've seen the video and the pictures of the water that's not clear. It's like red with all this and orangey with all these pollutants because they did a really bad job. And these companies, I don't know how they got away with it, except for the politicians. I mean, I was in the towns up in Wetzel and across the state 3 years ago talking to all these people. And, you know, it just, I don't know if you ever gone through a town that is mostly empty in West Virginia because of
Mhm. Yeah.
the industry leaving. It's really sad. It makes you want to cry because it's just like everybody's poor. They either live in a house that looks like it's not fit for human habitation, but people live there because they have to,
No
right?
place else to go.
That's right. There's no place else to go. I mean, they don't have enough money to go to another state or move into a rental, and you're like, oh, this is what government did to the state. I mean, we have all this wealth that's been. I mean, I remember 3 years ago talking to these coal miners, and they're like, yeah, you see all that coal? It's going all 100% to China. And I was like, why?
Yep. And
Politics,
and
you
it-
know?
and you actually covered something that I know Zach brought up the same way, which was how many of you said politicians linked to coal and the legislation. How many of them are the same thing?
Yeah.
They both own the mines and they were the politicians.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I actually looked at the list a while ago. I was like, wait a minute, this guy owns a mine. Andy was the governor, and this one was the senator, and this one was the rep. So
And their
it's
family
certainly been in
members.
there,
And
and their
yeah.
family members, yeah, and yeah. So yeah, I didn't realize Mansion was from coal industry as well. So I mean, to
Yeah.
some extent, I expect them to be miners or in coal, but not necessarily just the owners. So
Yeah.
that was a revelation.
Yeah.
All
And
right, all right.
we should always be seeking cleaner ways to get coal out of the ground and to when we use it to be as efficient as possible. And I like to think that the free market does a decent enough job. And I think we have to find a way to get government to be the referee, but not in such a corrupt way. Right now, it's all that money changing. I mean, I'll give you a quick story. When I was campaigning last time for 24, somebody told me that former state head of the state senate was given two briefcases full of cash from Bill Gates and somebody standing next to Bill Gates. They walked down, in the Capitol to buy him for his support for the battery factory up in Wetzel County or the Wetzel, the north. And I was like, this is crazy, but that just shows you like these politicians and the person I heard it from asked this politician, why'd you take it? Because I had to. Like they don't have a choice. Like I could disappear. I'm done. I'm ruined. Like whatever good that I want to do in my mind for the people that I was elected for is gone. And I'm like, well, you got to fight back. I mean, you at some point. maybe a little different when you have children and like you don't want to die, and you don't want them to get hurt from these crooks. But there has to be a line drawn in the sand somewhere, you know. Um, but yeah, I mean, just stories after stories about even in my county, like I was at this car dealership and this guy was in his 90s. He was like, we there was a house where all the alcohol was bought and sold, that whoever provided them enough alcohol would be elected some kind of local official, and just stories after stories after stories that I could write a book at if I'd ever taken notes. I just like, hey, this is just so wrong. This is so not how you and I are. We just want to be left alone. We just want to go work. We want to take care of our family, and we understand there is a some level of responsibility to to our fellow man, but it certainly isn't the seven and a half was it $7.5 billion that was spent last year in Charleston between federal and state taxes. It's some ridiculous number. And when I told that to somebody recently, they're like, there's like 1.4 million people in the state. They couldn't believe how much money was spent in taxes versus how the population of our state. And I was like, yeah, that's, it's because it's a game to these folks. And the solution is term limits and to get rid of most taxes, because the money is the fuel, right? And if we have term limits, those people are gone after 2, 4, or 6 years. And that's really important to have that fairness. Because, yeah, there could be lobbyists, but we can make laws about maybe no lobbying for 10 years after you get elected. But there's some lobbyist who was an elected official who's big with these data centers and has been texting everybody. I don't know if you got his texts a couple months ago, but a lot of people were talking on Facebook that they got. I don't remember who it was. It was the guy that Willis beat, the head of the Senate, right?
Okay.
That was that's now a lobbyist
Not
for
particularly.
AEP. I think,
I
and
think
there's
a friend of mine referred to that as the Iron Triangle. Is that how it's
I
referred to?
haven't heard that
You
term,
go
but
government to corporation to lobbying to government to corporation to lobbying up and back. You stay in one of those three roles because the regulator and the government side is the one that does. Yeah, it basically you can move between the three
yeah.
roles. A friend of mine described that to me as the Iron Triangle.
Hey, it's not bad. You make a 6-figure salary for life, basically, right? And you know,
You give up your
it, it,
soul for it.
yeah,
And
right.
that's what these guys do.
But it's a couple days at the country club, nice dinners, lots of friends, and you live well. And I've always thought if I were actually to go to DC, I'd have a little camera system set up. So you come into my office, you're gonna have a meeting with me. Hi, you're live on Facebook with Senator Bryan McKinney, and
We
you're
like that
lobbying for
transparency.
U.S. Air.
we're 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 gonna get to that question too. You're ahead of us.
Yeah, like what do you want to talk about? And I'll tell you what, they learned a lesson. Like,
Oh
how are we
yeah.
gonna buy this guy? But
They gotta
if
be
you have a term
careful.
limit, the people that are buying and selling politicians like commodities have to work so much harder for the new crowd, and more of people with a moral background will start saying no. Like, hey, I'm here for 2 years. That's not what I want to do. And then those lobbyists are going to go, leave with their tail between their legs and be like, wow, this is going to be tough, like to buy these people because they're only here for one term. But the politicians, they're never going to term limit themselves. We really need that. I think my next step after this election is to try to start a statewide petition to get that on the ballot, and I'm sure it's going to pass, probably 90%.
I think
But
a
we
lot of
need.
people would vote for term limit. A lot of
We
people
have
would
it for
sign that
governor,
petition.
right?
Yep, you got it. All right, let
Or,
me try the next uh, experts. The necessary policy. You just said the longstanding issue. You got that one right, Will?
Yeah, but the next one was
Yep.
about his
Is
experience.
what experience or expertise best prepares you for this role? And I do think you've covered this. But where do you expect to rely on advisors?
I gave you one that I would hire in a heartbeat. Is Zach Shrewsbury. Again,
All right, great.
I don't think
Campaign advice.
I disagree with him so much I probably wouldn't vote for him, but I'm not going to say I wouldn't hire him. See, there's a huge difference because I would not hire most Republicans in Charleston or DC. Um, I would have a basically a cabinet of like a circular table of my Knights of the Round Table. Basically, I'd have some guy from coal, some guy from eco-friendly energy. I'd have somebody from unions, somebody from law enforcement. So, just people that they'd have to, be interviewed because I want people that are no BS kind of people. They'd be like, they tell me how it is. Like this hospital needs to close, and here's why. Or I want somebody who's not going to be afraid to be like, yeah, we don't need 35 B3 bombers. We only need 7. Right. Like, I want
Right.
people that are going to be honest and be like, yeah, we can do without giving Ukraine any money because we know that like another country will kind of step up in our place, you know. I'm really big into like getting out of the UN and NATO and all these foreign entanglements. George Washington did a lot right. I really think that with the Whiskey Rebellion, I'm really disappointed in what he did. With the taxes involved with that, I think that's his biggest failure. That when I researched it, I was like, I'm never going to forgive you on this. Like you're a great president, but boy, you screwed up so bad with that one. Like, and I would say it to his face, like you kind of you almost risked everything else, because of that poor decision. But we really need to be focused on America only. You've heard that term America first, but immediately it's like, okay, who's next? Like, there's got to be somebody's next. And then how far is too far? When's it end? And I'm like, no, if it's only us, then, let the rest of the world deal with itself. But I'm just huge into getting rid of taxes and term limits. And you're not, I really want people that are not afraid. Sorry, one of my kids is down here. I had to chauffeur them up. um, but yeah, I want people that like are not afraid to tell me, like someone like yourself, like Bryan, you need to see the other side of this before you vote. I'm like, okay, you may not change my mind, but I'm gonna listen. The worst I can tell you is no. Most of
Which
these
is
politicians, they
respectable.
don't care.
Very, very respectable.
Yeah, yeah, because like
Yeah.
there's some issues that are more important, but like I want to hear when it is involved with West Virginia or authentic purposes of the federal government, like, oh, maybe you shouldn't vote against this farm bill. Well, I'm not going to vote for some several $1 trillion behemoth that it's got 5,000 earmarks dealing with things that are not farms in it. Like, I'm sorry, like I want a clean bill, and then I'm going to be debating: is this a function of government, or are they going to be? What happened? Is the world going to stop rotating if we don't pass this? Like, what's going to happen if we don't spend this money? You know,
Mhm.
we're in a
Good to think
shutdown.
about both sides.
Yeah,
The pros and cons. That's also a part of what we're trying to teach people to look at if how this benefits
Right.
us
yeah,
and how it can affect us. But
yeah.
continue.
Because there's a lot
Okay.
of things
So
government does that private sector, charities, policy groups should be doing, and not with our money, without us voluntarily giving it. And that's my big pet peeve.
all right. So we got our last 3 questions.
Sure.
Paul, go ahead and
First,
ask him
I
about
think
the
you touched
go ahead
the
if you
we got
want to ask him about the ranked choice
no no no
voting.
no
That's
leave that.
last.
Okay.
Oh yeah, really? Okay, all right. Well, I'll ask that. What's going to be the last? We got the. Well, I'll name the next 3 questions.
Okay.
How will you engage with constituents who did not vote for you or strongly disagree with your position? And I think you've covered it in the sense of listening, may disagree. But if not, go ahead and expand on that. And the next one is, what is your plan for transparency and accountability in office outside of having the camera in your office, which I thought was brilliant? Uh,
Yeah.
and kind of puts the lie to everything. If you've got that camera running 24/7, well, not in the bathroom maybe, but
Yeah.
you understand what I'm saying. Yeah,
Sure.
you've you've reduced it to necessary privacy. Um, so if you want to take
Town
those
hall
two, and then
meetings.
I'll pass the last one on to you.
Yeah,
Yeah, town hall
town
meetings.
hall
Got
meetings.
it.
Um, I don't know if you saw my website, but I put it up there pretty quite a few months ago. That I would, if I was elected, I would go to each county every year and have town hall meetings, like at a reasonable time, not like 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday, like in the evening, and allow people to come. And I used to give out my phone number, and it's probably maybe on my campaign website. And when I ran the first time, people were calling me, and we'd have a phone conversation for an hour or so. And like I'm sure they never got that kind of response from anybody else, because I'm like, hey, you know, don't be disrespectful and don't yell at me because you don't like the way I feel about some moral issue. Like, let's have a conversation. And most of the time it was like, okay, what do you think about this and that? And it wasn't on a big hot button issue like abortion. It was more of like, what do you think about this? Or what are you're against taxes? Like, so how are you going to fund the government? And my
Which is a
answer is,
fair question to
it
ask.
is. And my
And
answer
yeah,
is, what government? My wife asks me all the time, is like, Brian, do you support any kind of government? And I'm like, well, about as much as the founders, and it's like, I don't know what that answer is. I know that I'd probably be against 95% of the spending.
yeah.
And, but yeah, I think the federal government has proven itself unworthy of a penny of our money. And I know that, like, yeah, bridges have to be built and roads have to be paved, and there were tariffs
Like
that
the
paid for that.
necessaries, the
Yeah.
necessary stuff.
But again, a lot of that can be state. Why should the federal government be paying for a highway? They don't live here. They don't know where the potholes are. And I'm driving, I was driving around 81 and some other place the other day, and I was like, man, these roads are so bad. And then my daughter, or somebody, one of my kids with me, and was like, we spent so much money, and look at the way they cut these. They take these saws and they cut these lines, and I'm like, boy, they haven't figured out how to build a road. Like that doesn't need to be replaced every 2 or 3 years, because and that's sad, like that they're that bad after so much human history. But that's because government's doing it, like they're in charge, and there's corruption. And why build a road the way it needs to be built? You're working yourself out of a job. Too bad. you know um but I would go to every county, and then I'm just going to be like, hey, I think if I got elected, it would be clear that people could they could call the office, they could send an email, and I'm going to respond. I mean, if I get 10,000 emails a day, that's going to be a lot to respond to, but it's going to be more of like, hey, people are going to call. They want to be heard.
You're
They know
trying,
that,
which
yeah,
is
they want to know, do you care? Not so much do you have an answer. And so there's a woman who's on Facebook, and she's an active Republican. And I don't know her whole story, but she's really big into the child, um, like adoption and like childcare in West Virginia. There's a lot of problems with, I guess, the system of childcare outside of
Foster.
foster caring. Yeah, foster caring.
Yep,
And
I remember that came up big time.
it's so sad because if you have children, it breaks your heart to know that other children are being abused sexually and physically. Um, and it's just like, okay, why can't you get this right? Like, because there's money involved, and there's bad people involved. And again, instead of dealing with that, we see our state government. Oh, let's talk about the Bible. Let's talk about bestiality today. Let's talk about anything but actually solving the problem. And then apparently the FBI is involved with this, but not in a good way. Um, and I'm just like, that's the cost of being human, I guess, and having bad people. But it's like, we really need to fix this. And I thought the whole concept was make the parents whole, help the parents become whole, so that they can take back their children. Because I was under the understanding that most of the parents, they care for their kids, they're just addicted to the opiates and the drugs.
Mhm.
You know, they don't have a job. When you don't have a job in a state that the government has destroyed,
Mhm.
there's little hope. And that leads to drinking and drug abuse. And if you have that, it's really hard to get past that. And then you love your children, but you are broken as an individual, and it's not profitable for government to actually cure you. Just like, if you have cancer, they don't want to cure your cancer. They want you to keep buying their drugs. Um, so I don't have the answer for that. I know that it's a really serious issue, and it breaks my heart, like in to know that that's going on. But it's sad that we can't get everybody from both sides of the aisle and be like, okay, what is the solution? Is it more churches involved? Is it more um, nonprofits? What can we do as a government to help rather than to control? And right now, I feel like government is making the situation worse. I mean, I was telling my wife, like, we were talking about how many teachers in the public school system in this region, these 3 counties, have gone to prison in the last 10 years because they were having sexual relationships with students. And it was like, it's, it's every year, every couple of months, you'll see another teacher who's in the news who just
Yeah.
got
There was
arrested.
one in Martinsburg recently about the janitor. I'm sure. Did you see that one?
I don't, I might have seen it,
Yeah, it was a janitor. He was hiding in the car. It's sad. It really is sad.
yeah.
But
And the school system is so bad. It's like, okay, when are we going to realize that it's broken and we need to come up with something new? Is it privatization? Is it turning it into a military style academy that like they have? I don't know if you ever Texas A&M. I went down there years ago. They have a cadet corps. The students wear nice uniforms. They compete against each other. It camaraderie, respect of nation, rule of law, like understanding the history, and it's not it's everybody participates in it if they want to, and it kind of molds you into, I would think, better character citizens. So maybe I've always been a big proponent of uniforms. I was a teacher for a year in a school, and I can tell you that when you have uniforms, it don't matter if you show up in a Mercedes or a broken down
yep.
SUV. As soon as you get out of that vehicle, you look like everybody else. Same shoes, no crazy hair, um, you know, polo shirt, same thing, and it makes everybody equal. And we don't have that today. We have disrespect. What is it? Berkeley County was like a state of emergency last year in the middle schools because the students weren't, um, you know, listening to their teachers at all. Do you remember that? Like how bad it was in the media for a while, and it was really bad. And they were like, they didn't know how to deal with it. And I was like, this is a product of a broken system of the
Yep.
family. Men are not being good fathers. The women, they either don't have support of good men or they're just trying to work and be a parent at the same time. And like in West Virginia, don't we have a vast super majority of grandparents that are raising the children that are
Yeah.
with the family? I'm like, I didn't come from that, so I don't know what it's like to live that way, but I know it's not what God and intended or what is best for children, and we need to fix that. Like, but again, I don't think government's the solution because it doesn't care. Government's not this warm and fuzzy teddy bear. It's not butterflies and rainbows. This is a monster, that it just gobbles up treasure and freedom. Like that's why it exists, and only good people that really care can fix that. And I don't know if government is the solution for anything. You know, people are like, "Oh, you're a libertarian." I'm like, "No, I haven't given up. I accept that there's really two parties. I wish there was a bunch of no parties at all, right?
Mhm.
But I'm gonna play to win.
Yep.
Got it.
Otherwise, I'm wasting my
Well,
time."
well, this is perfect. I think perfect segue to our last question, which is, do you would you support or would you actually commit to ranked choice voting, or what's your opinion of it?
I would love to see it in action for a couple of years. I think right now we have what 5 or 6 candidates running for the U.S. Senate and the Republican side.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's about pretty even for
Yeah. And I think it was more so last time. Um
yeah, it's
because they,
six Republicans
I
and
was thinking it was
five
like
Dem
13 last time, but I
Goodness.
couldn't be sure. I mean, I just remember being like 10 or more. So it's like, well, who do you vote for? And you've got the incumbent, you've got your state senator Willis, and you've got a couple of people like me. Um, the other ordinary folks that are running, I don't feel that there's enough fire and brimstone. I think that a lot of people look at running for office like, oh, it's some civic duty and the awe of the honor. I'm like, I'm not that way at all. I'm like, I'm here because the other people there have failed. And I'm really scared if those kind of people keep doing this without more of the people like me and you who can put a wrench in the system. I'm not going to solve much if I get elected, but I'm going to definitely um, piss a lot of people off. And and as a U.S. Senator, sometimes that no vote will collapse a spending bill, right? And that's why I thought about it. I was like, hey, if I really want to stick it to the system, why should I run for the U.S. Senate versus the House of Representatives? I'm like, well, I'm one of 400, right, or 300 and some. That doesn't really matter, and but when you have a close, you know, split between Democrats and Republicans, I can bet you I can get a couple Republicans and Democrats on every bill that I don't support and be like, hey, let's work together on this to make it fail because that's not why we're here. You know, tomorrow we can go back to hitting each other, but today we're here because the rest of these people, they haven't read the Constitution. They don't even know why they're here.
Yeah.
And let's get together. I'd even work with someone like AOC or any. I would be best friends with her little club if on certain issues. I'm not above working with anybody. I'd even work with like Sanders if I had Bernie. You know, if I had to on certain issues. So
We're
and
we really enjoyed a lot of the answers, and
Yeah,
it's
thank you.
honestly really rare. Like nowadays, especially the thing is, it's really or polarized. Like we've mentioned that a few times, and yeah, it's really a breath of fresh air to see
thanks.
your answers and
Yeah,
everything.
thank
Well,
And
you.
I'll tell you what fuels me is I've always loved American history, and I feel like if I had chosen any time to have lived, it would either been during the American Revolution or World War II. And I always think when I think about when I have time away from my family for quiet peace, I always think about George Washington walking through Valley Forge at night and looking at the soldiers huddled around the fire without shoes, barely alive, the day before the Battle of Trenton. I'm like, that's what it was all about. Like that's what those people they gave everything for us. And that's kind of like we have to think that should be every day our mentality of we have to fight for our freedoms from government to live free in that mentality. Like there is no tomorrow. Like if we screw this up, if we fail, there's nobody coming to save us. The British are not coming to save us from ourselves, from 90% taxation and all the corruption and
very well said, Brian.
so
Very, very well said. Well, that
thank you.
is all the questions we had for you.
Well,
So
thanks. Well, even
I
if you
hope that
don't
was
vote for me,
fun.
you guys know Republicans and
yeah,
just tell
Yeah,
people
no,
I
no.
exist.
Well, I
of
think what you'll
course.
probably find from us is people get to know you, and what I believe Will and I have learned is it's a chance for people to get to hear candidates in a way that they
Thanks.
pretty much never will. I
Yeah.
can't think of a. This is not the. Yeah, it's not the sort of conversation they get to get an eye on. So,
Yeah. No, I love
good luck
doing this.
to you, and look forward to meeting.
Thank you. Well, we should definitely need to do that.